Agarwal, and he is President-elect for Association for Information Science and Technology USA. He is also Associate Professor and Director of Information Science and Tech Concentration at School of Library and Information Science, Simon University. He earned his PhD from the National University of Singapore from the Department of Information Systems, School of Computing. His teaching areas are technology and web development, theories of information science, knowledge management, and evaluation of information services. Naresh's research area is information behavior and knowledge management, the way people look for information and contextual factors that impact their choice of information sources. He has also published several research papers and books. His two famous books, one was on exploring context in information behavior, seeking situations surrounding and shared identities, were published by Morgan and Claypole in year 2018. His recent book on You Know the Glory, Not the Story has been published in 2021. He has been a keynote invited speaker at workshops and conferences in the US, Japan, France, Canada, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and South Africa. Naresh has a leadership role. He has served as a leadership position at Assets. He has been a member of his board of directors, director of the chapter assembly, conference co-chair of the 2017 annual meeting, chairs of SIG and committees, and founder of the South Asia chapter. He was awarded the Asset James M. Kirster Leadership Award in 2012. Prior to entering the doctoral program at NUS, Naresh worked for 6 years in technology roles in the voice over IP, bioinformatics, and digital cinema industries. So we are lucky that we have with us Dr. Naresh Agarwal. He will deliver his talk on change management skill for leadership in university and academic libraries. Before I invite him, I would like to request Honorable Dean, Professor Dr. Rubina Bhatti for her welcome address.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Salman and Dr. Naresh Agarwal. We are already too late. It's 10:30. That's supposed to start in at 10 o'clock. So thank you, Dr. Agarwal, once again for being the part of our such research and training opportunities for student researchers and library professionals. And today's topic is really important, that is change management and what skills are required for leadership in academic libraries and university libraries. We all know that due to the advancement in ICT and changes in higher education environment, and more emphasis is being given to the knowledge economy. So that leads to the certain factors that we need to manage change in academic and university libraries. So we need to discuss today that what kind of changes do we need and how to manage those changes. Definitely we need changes in the structures and functions and services of different libraries. So our very knowledgeable and expert, experienced resource person, Dr. Naresh Agarwal, will enlighten us about his thought and experiences, how to cope with such changes and what skills are required to advance different library services and providing user-centric services to all the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Professor Dr. Rubina Bhatti, for your address. Now I would like to request Dr. Naresh Agarwal to deliver his talk.
Thank you so much, Professor Bhatti and Dr. Salman. So I'm going to share my screen now. So here, the title of my talk is Change Management, and that's what the title for the workshop today is, and skills for leadership in universities and also in academic libraries. So I'm going to try and cover these two areas, universities as well as academic libraries, in different ways. And we'll also talk about what change really means and what we mean by change management. And my email address is agarwal@simmons.edu. My website is nareshagarwal.com. And my Twitter handle is nareshag. So this is just a view of Boston, the city where I'm based, where Simmons University, my university I work in, is there. And I actually live outside of the city in a small town. And this is my university, Simmons University, which is in the heart of Boston. It's one of the universities in the downtown of Boston. And right now in September, there was this kind of fall weather, and we still see these leaves around. But why I choose these colors in the theme is because when we talk about the idea of change, right, you see this movement. So initially these leaves were green, and as the fall comes, they start turning into red, and then this kind of a creamish color, and then they eventually all fall down, and then this bush becomes barren. So all the leaves gather. And next year when the spring comes again, in March, April, the leaves start coming back again, and then the cycle continues. So when we think of a change, right, we can see a change everywhere around us. We can see the change in a small roadside. We can see it in a plant, in a flower, in a child, in ourselves. We can see it, and in our institutions, in our libraries, and in our universities. So change is an essential part of who we are and how we operate as human beings, and how the world around us operates. So again, similarly, these leaves again are changing colors, and then very soon a lot of these leaves that are changing color will fall down. So even though it looks beautiful, but it is actually showing signs of change, and it is going towards decay. All these leaves will start falling down, and then turning brown. So this was taken more recently in November. That was an October picture, and this is around the neighborhood again. So a lot of these trees, you can see from the top part, they're beginning to fall down. So one thing that I want to do right now as we're participating is that I want you all to use the chat feature and write down what do you think is change. What do we mean by change, and what does change mean to you? Whatever word comes to your mind without thinking much, you can write that down on the chat. So Khurram says change relates to transformation. Yeah, transformation is one word, yes. What else comes to your mind when you think of change? So change means nothing is constant in this world. Okay, thank you, Khurram Shehzad. Yeah, so nothing is constant. So there's always a transformation, things are changing. Okay. The other people, yeah, can you write down your thoughts on what is change? Variation, yes. Faiza says that change is variation. Okay, what else? I want more thoughts in there. So transformation, nothing is constant, variation. So we get these three words and phrases for change so far. What else comes to your mind when you think of change? Okay, can we have one or two more people? Okay, technology development. This technology is also a change because it has changed the way we have worked. So Imran Khan says change is technology development. That's true. So Professor Bhatti says change is innovation. Yes. Trying to find new ways to do things. When you think of innovation, that is change. Okay, so here we have a few words right now. So we have transformation, we have variation, technology development, innovation, and that nothing is constant, right? So that gives us some idea about what we think change is. So I look at change in two ways. One is change about, and Dr. Shakil Ahmed says change is replacement of previous system. Replacement of previous system, or you can think in terms of old ways of doing things as well, right? And thinking about new ways of doing things. So replacement means you're taking something away and putting something in. So that's part of the change. So change can be of two types: change that happens to us, or change that we bring about. And that makes a huge difference, because when change that happens to us is often something beyond our control, and we may not like that. And change that we bring about is something that we are doing, and that is something desirable. So change that happens to us is often undesirable change. It's more of a situation that we find ourselves in. So Khurshid Ahmed says change is a better idea and opportunity. So better idea and opportunity is more about the change that we want to happen. So if we think of the COVID-19 pandemic, right, it is kind of a change that happened to us. We may not like it, but it's happened in a way that it has brought about changes in various ways in which we do things. So when we think of change, right, this idea of impermanence comes in. That I think one of you said that it was Khurram Shahzad who said that change means nothing is constant in this world, so which means nothing is permanent. So there is this whole idea of things being like impermanent. Okay. So that is the kind of the key part of when we think of change. So impermanence is a big word, and one of the things you'll realize in our lives is that nothing is in our lives is constant or permanent. So things are constantly changing for good or for bad or something. So good things are becoming not so good after a while, and then not so good things are becoming better. So one of the things we have to think of in our lives as individuals is to contemplate on impermanence, or this idea that nothing is constant. So M. Adil says to replace with or exchange for another. Okay. So here we see a little caterpillar becomes a pupa and then flies off as a butterfly. So that's a change, right? So at that point, the caterpillar has no idea that it's going to turn into a butterfly, but then it becomes a whole different looking creature, looking insect. And when we see the fall leaves, we see all this impermanence, right? So things that were looking green and they were on the leaves, now they've all fallen to the ground. And when we see all these very beautiful flowers, cherry blossoms in this case, and then they decay as well. So that is all a part of that. Things are impermanent, things are changing, nothing is constant forever. And this was a painting that I made a long time ago in 1997 when I was doing my computer engineering as an undergraduate in Singapore. And it shows two women from the state of Rajasthan in India who are with a chakki, like which has this it's a grinding wheel. So if you put rice or wheat over this, it will become it will be ground completely. So that used to be a common part of the village life, but it also shows something deeper. It shows sort of the wheel of time. And in central India, there lived a saint called Kabir, and Kabir is kind of important in the sense that Kabir was revered both by Muslims and by Hindus, and he was around the same time when Sufism and the Bhakti movement, all those was starting, and he used to sit by the river, and he used to notice everyday things, and he used to write two-line poems. And one was when he saw this grinding stone, and he wrote this line in the kind of Hindi that was spoken over there, and which says that "Chalti chaki dekh ke diya kabira roy, दो पाटन के बीच में साबुत बचा न कोई." which means that when this chakki or the grinding wheel was moving, and looking at that, Kabir started crying, and he cries because in between these stones, nothing stays intact. So in one case, he is referring to the wheat that is there, and once you put the wheat in between these two stones, the wheat does not stay like in one piece. It comes out as flour. But then he's also referring to the bigger wheel, where he sees the top wheel as the sky or the heaven, and the lower wheel as earth. And this wheat over here is all the human beings. And he says that in between this sky and the earth, all the human beings that are there, all the animals that are there, all living beings, right? They are all going through this wheel of time. And as they're going through this wheel of time, none of them stay like in one piece or alive over a period of time, and they all become flour, or they all reduce to dust. And looking at that, Kabir starts crying. So he used to take this very simple day-to-day life things and try to derive meanings from this. But what it shows is that change is an essential part of the way the world operates. And in the teachings of the Buddha as well, there's this concept called Dukkha, which in Urdu would be taklif, and which is suffering. So he says us that there are three patterns of Dukkha or suffering. Dukkha is ordinary suffering, the obvious physical and mental suffering associated with birth, growing old, illness, and dying. That there is suffering in birth, in the process of giving birth. There's suffering when growing old, and when people fall sick, like what we're seeing during COVID times, there's suffering, and dying, there's suffering as well. But a big part and a very important part of his teaching was Dukkha is produced by change. So when we think of this idea of change, right, there is some sort of a suffering attached to that, or a taklif attached to that, or a pain attached to that. That the anxiety or the stress of trying to hold on to things that are constantly changing, because we are trying to hold on to something and those things are changing. So because of that, that produces the anxiety in us. So and he also talks about the idea of the suffering of conditioned states, a basic unsatisfactoriness pervading all forms of existence, because all forms of life are changing, impermanent, and without any inner core or substance. On this level, the term indicates lack of satisfaction, a sense that things never measure up to our expectations or standards. So there is some sort of lack all the time that a lot of people seem to feel, with something missing all the time. But this change this suffering is what we're going to talk about as produced by change. So all our suffering arises out of a futile attempt to make permanent that which is inherently impermanent. So things are constantly changing by the very nature, but we make this very useless attempt to try to fix them to be like permanent, and that causes a lot of suffering to us. So when you look at this suffering or dukkha as produced by change, so there are three types that he put forward. One is getting what you don't want. So that's a change that's happened. You got something that you do not want. So being unable to avoid difficult or painful situations. So as we noticed, right, maybe at this moment you can think of a lot of times in our lives, right, when we did not get what we want. The COVID-19 pandemic is one such thing that we did not get in advance, but in our jobs, in our relationships, in our systems, in the way we work, there are lots of things that happens that we are not able to avoid certain situations. Okay, so when we get things that we don't want, that is called taklif or pain as well, or suffering. But then not being able to hold on to what is desirable. So there are things that you like and you want. So you really want to hold on to that which is desirable, lovely, splendid, or terrific. And when you're not able to hold on to that, so again that causes anxiety, and that causes us stress as well. And sometimes there's this fear of losing what is desirable. So you have everything perfect, and you get again you suffer because you are afraid that you might lose that. So that is another form of suffering. And not getting what you do want. So this is like when you do not get what you want, again you suffer. So this underlies the previous two categories, anxiety of not getting what you want. Okay? So in my book on context, when I try to define various kinds of context, one of the types I define as context as something that happens to people. That's context of situation. The idea of thrownness. Okay? So let me show you a part of this over here. So here, when we think of this idea of thrownness, so this is the book, and we have context as situation. So situation is a set of related activities or set of related stories that occur over time. And when we think of thrownness, right, here we have a situation can also be considered something that happens to people when we deal with things not because we want to, but because we have to. And the German philosopher Martin Heidegger describes this as thrownness. The thrower of the project is thrown in his own throw. So you kind of find yourself in a situation, you just get thrown onto it. And how can we account for this freedom? We cannot. It is simply a fact, not caused or grounded, but the condition of all causation and grounding. A close parallel is the idea of situatedness, where the actor's behavior and cognitive processes are believed primarily to be the outcome of a close coupling between the actor and the environment. So there's something that happens between you as a person, the actor here means a person, and the environment that surrounds us, the place we work, the university, the library, or the setting at home. When those come together, the environment and us, then those bring about a certain situation or a certain environment where we are like thrown, like, when somebody picks us up and throws us in a swimming pool or in water or something. So that's the kind of situation that we can find ourselves in at times. So coming back to our slides, there's the other kind of change that we want to make. So what we looked at was the undesirable change, the impermanence that is there in the world, things that we do not like often, and that's difficult for us to accept. But there are changes that we ourselves initiate and that we want to make, and that Professor Bhatti mentioned the word innovation. When we think of innovation, that is the kind of change that we do want. So so this is again a picture of the surroundings here in the winter time, and so the snow, then when spring comes, right, in March and April, then though that scenery transforms to this one. So this is a desirable change when we have cherry blossoms and other kinds of bushes all around. So these are the two kinds of changes. So there are things that we do not want and things that we want. And there's a prayer called the Serenity Prayer, which is a very interesting and a very powerful prayer, in the sense that it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So there are really two things when we find ourselves in a situation, or that idea of thrownness where we talk about, right, that I had in my context book, when we see a context as being thrown into a situation. So to accept the things I cannot change. So firstly, whenever we are in a situation, you have to ask yourself, is this something that you can do anything about, that you can change? Or is this something that you can do nothing about, that you cannot change? Okay? If there is something that you can do about, let's say somebody does some injustice to you, you're supposed to be elected to some position, but somebody did not allow you to, or there was some roadblock, and then there was some sort of injustice done to you, and now you can think that, is it something that you want to fight for it? Like, can you change that in some way? Okay, and if yes, then you need to have the courage to say, okay, I'm going to do something about it. You try to do all the things that are there in your hands to change. And after you have tried, or once you've determined that this is not something that I can change, then you see that, okay, is it something that is beyond my control? Or maybe in a given situation, there are some things that you cannot change and some things you can change. So for instance, when the COVID-19 pandemic happens, maybe we cannot change let the pandemic go away, but then we can adapt to it, and we can have online webinars and online workshops that we are doing right now, and we can find other ways to connect more people, connect to people more face to face, and so on. Okay, so when that happens, right, so So whatever things you can change, we can try to change that. We can try to do something about it. And then once we determine that this is the part that which I cannot change, then that is the part which you need to accept. So accept means being graceful about it. So after you have done your best, after you tried 100%, whatever remains in things that you cannot change, so that is where acceptance needs to come in. And with experience in life, as you keep going, looking at encountering more and more situations, we will know the wisdom. We will know the difference between what are the things that we can change and what are the things that we cannot change. And so that's a key part of change management. So there's this book called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a very famous book which has sold millions of copies. It's a very small book by Dr. Spencer Johnson, and you will find copies of this book online for free as well. So let's look at what's in the book. So this is the book Who Moved My Cheese, and I found a PDF in archive.org, and it has various versions over there. And so when you have in the book Who Moved My Cheese, right? So it's an amazing way to deal with change in your work and in your life. So the story is very simple. In the story, once upon a time in a long ago in a land far away, there lived four little creatures, characters, who ran through a maze looking for cheese. So there were two mice, right? And there were two little people. So the names of the mice were Sniff and Scurry. Sniffing means like they're smelling with the noses, right? And scurrying are running around. And there were also two little people. Oh, sorry. So these were two little people, Sniff and Scurry. And they were as small as mice, but who looked and acted a lot like people today. And okay, so the two mice were Sniff and Scurry, and the two little people were called Hem and Haw. Okay. So the job of the mice or the rats were just to smell, and the two little people they would often try to complain and all that. So hemming and hawing here means like complaining a lot. Okay. So they used to all go and look for cheese all the time, and cheese, or what we'd call it, like paneer, you know. And so the mice are looking for the cheese, and Hem and Haw, which were the two little people, they were looking for a different kind of cheese with a capital C, which they believed would make them feel happy and feel successful. And both of these shared something in common. So every morning they would put on the jogging suits and running shoes, leave their little homes, and go into the maze looking for their favorite cheese. So as they go about, right, they just realize that having cheese makes you happy. So whatever you want, whether it's money or whether it's home or whether it's relationships or whether it's love, like all those, whatever you call your cheese, right, that makes you happy. And but after a while, you start feeling a sense of entitlement, like we deserve this cheese, like, you know, we start feeling that, okay, this is just there, like you feel that, okay, not being grateful for the cheese being there, but you kind of feel that, oh, that cheese has to be there. And but one morning they came to the cheese station C, and then discovered that there was no cheese. So Sniff and Scurry, like, they used to always smell and all that, so they noticed that the supply of cheese had been getting smaller every day, and they were prepared, and they knew what to do. So they removed the running shoes which they had around their necks. They placed them on the feet, and they started like getting ready to run. So they do not overanalyze things, and they are not burdened with many complex beliefs. So it was a very simple answer for them. The situation at the cheese station had changed. There was no more cheese. So now they decided to change. Because there was a change around them, they were thrown in a certain situation. So they also needed to change. So they lifted their nose, sniffed, and nodded to Scurry, and then they went around searching for new cheese. But the other two little people, the Hem and Haw, the complaining people, they came, and they were unprepared for the cheese they found. They said, like, what? No cheese? No cheese? No cheese? Who moved my cheese? So they were really started calling it like my cheese. They said it's not fair. And then they started yelling something, and then they like didn't want to face that. And the behavior at the time was not very attractive or productive, but it was understandable. And finding cheese just wasn't easy, and it meant like a great deal more to little people than just having enough of it to eat every day. So whether it is health or whether it's material things or spiritual well-being, right? So cheese made them feel safe, having a loving family someday, living in a cozy cottage and all that. And they dreamt of the cheese being bigger and all that. So while the Sniff and Scurry had already started looking for new cheese, Hem and Haw continue to like complain. And so the lesson here is that the more important your cheese is to you, the more you want to hold on to it. Okay, and this should not happen to us. If it does, we should at least get some benefits. And it's like, why should we get benefits? Because we're entitled, they say. Okay, entitled to what? Entitled to a cheese. Why? Because we didn't cause this problem, somebody else did, and we should get something out of it. And then one of them suggested that like maybe we should stop analyzing the situation, someone just get out and find some new cheese. So as they go to, they basically wasted a lot of time feeling sad, complaining and all that, rather than just moving ahead to find new cheese when they saw that the cheese was changing. So if you do not change, you can become extinct. That is one of the lessons from this book as well. So one of the things is that a lot of the times we do not look for new cheese because we are very afraid. We are very afraid of losing the cheese that we have. Okay? And that is where the Buddha's teachings here come in the part where it says that this is the one. We're very afraid, like we do not want these changes, like and because we are afraid of what would happen. What would happen, like if something that is desirable, if that gets lost, or something that's undesirable if that comes in. So we are very afraid. So that is one of the key things. So the big lesson here is, what would happen? What would you do if you were not afraid? So if you start answering this question right, then we can start finding some solutions to accepting change. So smell the cheese often so you know when it is getting old. So one of the things to do is that always look for patterns. Whenever you see, sometimes some changes are very sudden, but a lot of the changes we can start seeing some pattern here and there. And knowing that the way things are going, you can start preparing for change. So this is that smelling the cheese often. So that is the key part. And also smelling the cheese often so that you know when it is getting old. So when some systems, so I think one you said in the chat that when to replace, I think Dr. Shakil Ahmed says that change is the replacement of the previous system. So if you're smelling the cheese often, right, then you know that some systems are getting old and that requires a change. And I think very recently you had the conference on interdisciplinary research. So again, one of the things was that like there were certain limitations to doing research within the discipline. So there is some change needed by looking outside the discipline. So that is again one kind of change that you feel you need. So when you move beyond your fear, you feel free. Okay? So imagining yourself enjoying new cheese even before a finder leads me to it. So one of the things you can do is that you can imagine the new thing that's going to happen once some good things that come out of it. Once you see that, once you let go of the fear, then that makes you free to adapt to change. So the quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you will find new cheese. Okay? And it is safer to search in the maze than remain in a cheeseless situation. So rather than just sitting and waiting, it is best to go out and start looking for a new situation when you see that the situation under you has started changing. And old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese. So you need to change your belief system in order to find new cheese. So when you see that you can find and enjoy new cheese, you change the course. So noticing small changes early helps you to adapt to the bigger changes that are to come. And that's all one of the key things over here. So change happens. They keep moving the cheese. Anticipate change. So get ready for the cheese to move. Monitor the change. So smell the cheese often so you know when it is getting old. Adapt to change quickly. So the quicker you let go of the old cheese, the sooner you will enjoy new cheese. So change is move with the cheese and enjoy the change. Savor the adventure and enjoy the taste of the new cheese. And be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again. They keep moving the cheese. So this is the short book which is there about who moved my cheese. Okay. So that is one part about how to deal with change in your work and in your life. And the other topic that I wanted to cover was this idea of knowledge management. Now, knowledge management is a set of processes that organizations, for-profit companies, non-profit companies, like universities, like academic libraries, public libraries, and they can adapt to bring about change in the way your organization works. So typically, you have some sort of a value system. Okay. So a value system basically means that a value proposition. So what is it that you want to improve? So let's say when you think of a library, then you want to innovate, bring about innovation in your library services. When you think of a university, you want to improve the university ranking, you want to retain your students that come to the university, you want faculty to publish research in different places, you want the students to be happy, and you want the staff to get good salaries. So there are lots of different kinds of value propositions that the university might have or the library might have. So you can use knowledge management as a mechanism to try to structure what you want and have a set of processes to bring about this change in the way you work. So knowledge management is a very, very key technique and mechanism that has been in place and a set of processes since the 90s. And many companies, including like the NASA, World Bank, they all have adapted knowledge management to improve the way the organizations work. So that is one of the key ways as change management. So I'm going to take you through the key findings of some of my research papers, looking at how can you implement knowledge management to bring about change. So the first one is initiating knowledge management in colleges and universities. This is published in 2014. Okay. So this is my website. So this is like when you go to nareshagarwal.com, then on the top part of the site, there is this category called research. So I have put a lot of my publications as open access, as freely accessible right inside this this research part, and they are organized by categories. Okay. So this was the first one. So how can you implement knowledge management in colleges and universities? So this paper was done with Professor Leila Maroof of Kuwait University. And here, when we think of knowledge management, right, it plays an important role in an organization by facilitating the capture, storage, transformation, and dissemination of knowledge. It is a collaborative and integrated approach adopted organization-wide to ensure that an organization's knowledge assets are best utilized to increase organizational performance. So you can think of knowledge management as a way of like, you know, when you have a lot of things that people in your library employees know. So all the people, let's say your library opens at 8 o'clock and closes at 6 in the evening. So whatever time the library opens and whatever time the library closes, right, all the knowledge of the library walks in and walks out during that time. So how can you ensure that the knowledge that are there in the employees of libraries or in the faculty and staff in a university, they retain even beyond if somebody was to leave? So the process you adopt to keep that knowledge within the organization is knowledge management. But the important part here is that it can also be thought of as a way to make our lives easier than what it is. So when you put change management not necessarily as a big area of change or impermanence, right? But if you put it as something as simplifying your life, making your life easier and better than what it already is, then change management, then it becomes much more easier to accept, and it becomes more desirable. So here, what we've done in this study is that, so yeah, it talks about why is knowledge management needed in colleges and universities, because colleges and universities have been described as an organized anarchy with unclear or even contradictory goals. And policies of higher education systems are often characterized by a lack of consistency and an inability to reach agreement, which makes universities difficult to manage. So these are seen as like loosely coupled organizations, and they're also grappling with change. So there's increased competition from other places that are able to award a large number of scholarships or interest-free loans or provide a lower cost of education. And with the advent of online education, so traditional students coming to physical classrooms are decreasing. They're finding newer options. So again, with the COVID-19 pandemic, that has become even more apparent, because now people are more used to working online and interacting over Zoom as well. So maintaining financial stability, growth, student retention, faculty and staff salaries, raises, reputation of the institution are all challenges facing most places of higher education. Okay. So what we have done in this paper is that we've come up with a 10-step process to manage the change. So let me show you a few thicker things. So you have a value proposition as to what is the kind of change that you want to bring about, or like which will fulfill the organizational objectives. Okay. So that is the key part of what you put over there. And then you have a sort of a cycle that the first phase is of a planning stage, and then a design stage, and then you implement, and then you scale up in the way you start implementing this knowledge management or this change management within your with your university, or it could be even be within a library, because the set of processes will be the same even if you do it in an academic library. So for that, you need 4 important things. You need to have a culture. So culture plays a very important role, because the kind of culture you have, whether it's a knowledge sharing culture where people are more open, that makes a huge difference. If people have fixed ideas, right, that things should happen in a particular way, then people are not very open to change. And then what kind of physical infrastructure do you have, both physical infrastructure and also technological infrastructure to help you to help towards these processes. And also you also need to come up with your own measures to see whether the change was successful or not. And you cannot have prior measures. You need to come up with your own measures, because you are the one who you want to see, like your faculty and your staff or your library employees will need to determine whether these measures are good enough or not for the change that you're trying to bring. So for the 10 steps, the first one is to find a champion from the top administration and to form a knowledge management planning team or a change management planning team. And I think let me go. I have a table below, so let me go straight to that, which is kind of a summary of all the processes here. Yeah. And then in the second step, we need to identify knowledge management goals and priorities. So identify what is the perceived crisis. So what is the crisis that we need to overcome, or what is the opportunity that we have? How, like, maybe there's an innovation opportunity, maybe there's an opportunity to do something more that we haven't done. So we need to align the goals with the university or the library or the department goals, and that should become the goals of the change manager or knowledge management. Also identify and prioritize the critical knowledge that you need to manage. So what sort of knowledge is required in this process that you need? So are there things that you need to capture whether people already know? Do you need to get some information from outside, and so on? So you need to have consultation with stakeholders, and you can have 3 to 4 retreats, like gatherings between your faculty and staff or your library employees, to identify what are your goals and priorities. Okay, and then you have some sort of a pilot size chosen. Okay, what is the area in which you'll bring about the change first? And then you also form a design team. And in the second stage, when you go from the planning to the design stage now, you determine what is the current state. What is it that your people already know? What do they feel? What is their behavior? What is the mood? That will really impact, because knowing your own people and knowing where you are in terms of the culture especially, that really helps to see what is it that you need to do. So you can do a survey, you can do interviews, you can do focus groups for this, and come up with a relative rating for each priority area. So we actually, Leila and I, we took this step 3 and we created a separate paper out of this, and we did a whole study on that, to see whether your university is ready for knowledge management or not. So that's called Readiness Assessment, this part, determining your current state. So we came up with 2 instruments. One is, so as we had the steps, we came up with a model. So we can see that how ready are your employees, whether your library employees or your faculty or staff, to participate in such a change management initiative or a knowledge management initiative. Okay, to see this readiness, you can survey your people for trust. Do you trust each other? Self-efficacy means that do you believe in your own ability or not? So how competent do you think your staff and your faculty feel they are? What is the degree of collegiality? How much do people like each other? What is the kind of support system? Is one person trying to step onto other person's toes, or do you have a culture where people are trying to help each other? And also, how open are you to change? So openness to change is an important individual factor. And reciprocity means that if I do something for someone, will somebody else do something for me as well? So those are the factors which make like people ready for change or not. And organizational factors. Do you have a knowledge sharing culture? Are you heavily centralized from the top down, or do you have a decentralized structure where you make your people powerful and you assign powers at the lower levels? What kind of organizational support do you have for change? What is the top management support? And what kind of technology infrastructure do you have for change? So both these individual factors and organizational factors will affect how ready you are for change. Okay. And we have come up with questionnaires. And this question, another study, we have also tested this questionnaire. So for trust, you can have a questionnaire like, I believe colleagues in my university or department or library are knowledgeable and competent. And for self-efficacy, or things like, I'm confident in my ability to provide knowledge that others may consider valuable. Pursue degree of collegiality. Colleagues in my university, library, or college demonstrate respect towards each other, support each other, negotiate respectfully with each other, and so on. Openness for change. I'm open to novel experiences and ideas. I enjoy new experiences. I'm willing to support change in my college or university. I'm enthusiastic when changes are proposed in my college. I'm upset when things are proposed in my college, university, or library. Again, on a scale of 1 to 5, let's say on a Likert scale, if I strongly disagree is 1 and strongly agree is 5. So these kinds of questions can help determine how open are your employees to change. So you have other questions here, and I also have we have interview questions as well. How do you describe knowledge sharing within the university? How do you describe organizational structure? What kind of organizational support do you have? So these can be adapted as an instrument to be used first when you're trying to implement knowledge management or change management within your university, and then within the academic library as well. So once you've done your step 3, you have a relative rating for each priority area, and you determine the approach to align with the culture and capability to enable the knowledge flow. So what this alignment here means is that there could be various types of knowledge. Okay, so maybe you have a culture where people don't talk to each other much, or there is not much of knowledge sharing. And the tacit and explicit here means that tacit is a kind of knowledge that is in our heads, the knowledge we know. Explicit knowledge is a knowledge that is there in the form of books and all. So the best kind of interaction is the transfer of best practices. So you're doing a lot of this in the Islamic University of Bahawalpur, because what you are doing here is that you have you are for instance, you've invited me for a talk here. Recently you held other pre-conference workshops where you got different speakers. Then you had the conference itself where you got various people to present, right? So that is a good way to transfer best practices, and that means that you are creating a knowledge sharing culture. So that is a very, very good signs of things that you have within your university. And then you can have communities, but then if you do not have a knowledge sharing culture in your place where people are not valued, then you can move towards the self-service, where you just you have like a website or a database, and you can just pick whatever you want. There are not many people helping each other, but there are some books there, and there are some like online stuff that you can access, and you can also share some lessons that you learn with each other. So if your culture is anti-sharing, right, then you can focus more on a technology-based solution to change management. But if your culture is pro-sharing, where people are ready to share what they know, then you can go to a more people-to-people interaction and a communities of practice, and you transfer best practices. So you have people here who are key partners who are supported by technology. So you can have various tools which are both technology-based and non-technology-based to create this culture. But for anti-sharing, you can only have a technology-based solution. Okay. So once you determine this approach and then you need to develop the measures for success. You need to come up with your own measures as to how do you determine whether you're successful or not in bringing about the change. And you create an action plan and get faculty and administration buy-in and resources. You launch a pilot and provide support, create success stories and publicize early results. And then you realign the library objectives or university objectives, and then you scale up to other units and repeat. So this sort of repeats again, like this is the plan stage, the design stage, implementing, and then scaling up. Okay, so that's a 10-step process that you can use to bring about change within your library or within your university. So so once we do that, you can also have more specific innovation things that we can look at, the opportunities that academic libraries can avail of. So here again, we did a survey of how do academic libraries work with the users to co-create value for service innovation. So here in this survey, we had like 3 research questions. What services does the library provide that it believes is of value to its users? How does the library gather knowledge about its users, knowledge for its users, knowledge from its users? And how can it create value for people? So as we go down here, there were a number of questions. So what services does the library provide? So I think we got, we used the IFLA mailing list, and we got responses from more than 100 responses from people from various different countries. So I think we have like a library location, and then like yeah, in different countries were represented over here. So what services does the library provide? So access to physical resources, physical online ebooks, helping answer questions, instruction, recommendation, user awareness and disseminating information, helping with interlibrary loan and books, technology, gadgets, and so on, and understanding, evaluating and responding to user needs. So those are the types of services that the library typically provides. And if you are running your libraries right now, you can identify with some of these: printing, scanning, and services for specialized services, and then helping manage research data and so on, and the provision of a physical space environment. And how does the library learn about the user? So you can learn about from face-to-face and social media. You can get user feedback, and again, so there are various ways that libraries use to get to learn about the users. So what mechanisms does the library employ to disseminate relevant information to its users? Through social media, online tools, through workshops, asynchronous communication. And how does the library make use of the knowledge that the users possess? So here, for this particular study, we had 21 respondents, but we had another study where we had more than 100 respondents. So here it has tailoring services to user needs. You acquire more books and periodicals in your library collection, or get more technology support, and so on. And to ensure user and the library interaction, you can do meetings and discussions and collaboration library events, or through online and email. And you can also have voluntary services, one-on-one conversations, and so on. So in terms of the areas for innovation, so you can have maker spaces, projects, 3D printing, user feedback, information literacy, website design, social media, collection development, ebooks, and other things. And in terms of the risks of getting users to participate with the library, so it's difficult to handle user expectations. Maybe there is a lack of interest in knowledge that users have. Maybe your standards will lower. And then there are other benefits of involving and engaging the user. Okay. And how are you bringing about innovation in your library? So one is doing a lot of things as pilots. So trying to pay attention to what other libraries are doing, encouraging staff to try new things, encouraging sabbaticals and research to bring about innovation, go to library conferences, and so on, collaborating, trying to get user feedback, using ICTs, OPAC system, information literacy. Now we can also use information literacy as a way to educate users to fight disinformation and fake news. And again, reference services, having innovative reference services where you're actually going to where the users are rather than having the users come to you, user-centered design, and other types of innovation as well. So you can also have the users involved in that, tailoring to user needs, and so on. So okay, so these were the key findings from this paper. And then we had another paper here, which is on effective knowledge management on service innovation in academic libraries. So these papers are with Anwarul Islam who's currently in Dhaka University. He's an associate professor there, but earlier he was a PhD student in the Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology when he started working with me. So here again, when we think of change management in a library, right, to bring about innovation, we need to do a few things. So we came up with a framework for knowledge management for service innovation in libraries. So first you need to implement knowledge management. You need to gather the knowledge of user needs. What does the user need within the library? And then what are the possibilities for innovation? What sort of services do you want to put forth? And what sort of interface do you have for the patron? And what is the kind of service delivery systems do you want to have? What technological options do you have? So one is the possibilities, basically. What are the needs of the users? So needs of the users is simple because they have a current need, you need to fulfill that need. But then this is about kind of a future. Like for instance, when Steve Jobs came up with iPad, right? The tablet was not really much used as a device. It had come a few years before that and flopped. So people used to have laptops, or people used to have smartphones and mobile phones. But there wasn't really a tablet. So when we thought of as a device in between a mobile phone and a laptop or a computer or a desktop computer, that's when we thought of an idea of a tablet. So that is one example of an innovation possibility, something which is possible to have, which is not currently there. And you also need to understand what are the barriers that you have. So the example that I showed you earlier in the 10-step process was step 3, when we had those survey questionnaires and the interview questions. That will give you ideas about the type of barriers that to identify. So once you know what the needs of the users are, what are the possibilities for innovation, and what are the barriers, you can analyze and synthesize the results, and you can find ways to overcome the barriers. And in this way, you will be able to move towards service innovation. Okay. So let's go back here. And you can also choose various types of tools for implementation of knowledge management in academic libraries. So here we have, this is another paper from 2014 called Knowledge Management Implementation. So what we've done in this paper here is that we have, let me just scroll down. Yeah, so we have put forward this structure of the knowledge management cycle. So you need to understand how is knowledge created and captured within your library or within your university. How is it shared and disseminated? How is it applied and used? So, and you can have various kinds of tools and technologies, as well as processes for knowledge creation and capture, for knowledge sharing and dissemination, and knowledge application and use. So then what we have here is non-IT tools for knowledge capture. Let's say that you can have a mental model, or you can have like ad hoc sessions, brainstorming sessions. So you get a group of people to think of new ideas. You can get guest speakers, as you're doing right now. So that's again one way of capturing the knowledge, right, of somebody and bringing it to your university or to your library. And you can have knowledge cafes. And then there are also technology tools that we have for knowledge capturing. So co-browsing, collaborative visual reviewing, collaborative writing, and then creating a knowledge community, or profile capturing, mind mapping. Okay. And then for knowledge sharing and dissemination, again, you have various tools for knowledge sharing, creating a community of practice. You can have a collaborative physical workspace, storytelling. And for technology tools, you can have instant messaging, chat, intranet. You can have webinars, as you're doing right now, like this Zoom. And then you can have social networking and 3D immersion and so on. So again, technology tools and non-technology tools for knowledge sharing and transfer, and for applying and use. Again, you can do like a personality test for people. You can do personalizations, and you can have like seeing when people are available or not, locating the expertise of different people, project management tools. So all of these can help in the various knowledge management processes that are there. So we have come up with, again, a figure where you need to have tools for knowledge creation and capture, tools for knowledge sharing and transfer, tools for knowledge application and use. And then in a library, that you have various kinds of services for acquisition, for circulation, for technical services, interlibrary loan, etc. So for each of these services, wherever you want to improve, bring about improvement or change, you need to think of what tools will help in terms of trying to share the knowledge, which will help in bringing about a change in that area. And you also need to identify your people. So who are the people who are innovators, and who are the people who are early adopters to change, who are the early majority, and those who are the last ones to come in. So typically you try to work with people who are the innovators. You get a few people to join you, and with these few people, you start with a small idea, you bring that idea to some sort of a level, and then you get other people involved, so that you can show the idea as a proof of concept. And whatever tools you choose, you also need to analyze the tools for whether it's useful or not, and whether it's easy to use. Okay. So I think that is there. I also had a paper on knowledge retention and transfer. I think that we will not go through, because I think we don't have a lot of time. But this talks further about what can you do to retain the knowledge of outgoing employees and then transfer the knowledge to new employees. So I do have the link for that. Okay. And one thing that I also briefly wanted to talk about was this idea of strategic planning. So universities, libraries, they can carry out a strategic plan. So this is a strategic plan of the Association for Information Science and Technology. So typically you can do a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities and threats in your university or within a library? And then you can come up with what are your goals that you want to reach? Where do you want to reach in the next 3 years, the next 5 years? So that is a big part of change management, thinking of your goals and strategic plans. So for ASIST, which is the association, there it is like membership, retaining members, growing members, publications, coming up with new publications, and then for knowledge sharing. Okay, knowledge sharing was a key part of the strategic plan of ASIST, and then coming up with partnerships with other associations. So again, what are the measures for this? So one of the things we talked about earlier in the 10-step process was coming up with the measures. So you need to think for each of these goals, what are the ways in which you would measure the success, and what are the targets by what time you would want to achieve that. So it's more detailed here. It is like various goals are written, and then various objectives under each goal, and then various specific tactics to achieve these goals. And later on, like there is a progress report, progress written as to how each goal was, like progress is mapped about for each one. Okay, so coming up with a strategic plan is again a very important part for your library or for your university. So that's all. This is my book that just came out, and it captures the stories of 25 people who went from India to Singapore to study, and then went on to find something called the ikigai, or the reason for being in their lives. So these are the 20. Ikigai means like when you combine what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs, then you get something called the ikigai. And for each of these 25 stories, right, in the book, and my story is also there as one of the stories, one of the things is the idea of change. So a lot of these people were very resilient and very adaptable to change, and because of that, that led them to try to get towards what really meant for them in life. So I think being adaptable to change is a key part over here. So thank you. That is all that I wanted to cover, and I'm ready for your questions or the further program.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh, for your comprehensive talk on change management. So let me see if is there any question.
Okay.
If anyone got any question, he or she may raise her hand.
So the Khurram Shehzad has a question. Thank you, Khurram. Wonderfully delivered a comprehensive talk on the topic with well-knit thoughts covering an interesting blend of lifelike situations, instances, illustrations, academic and professional themes, etc. Grab ample of innovative ideas to the workshop. Thank you, Khurram. Thank you.
Is there any participant, any question? Okay, this is comment. One. There are comments actually.
There are comments, yeah.
You can type your question in the chat box if anyone got any question, or can raise hand.
Dr. Salman, do you have a question for me while the people are typing?
I've got many questions,
Okay.
but the very first question that stuck in my mind, that do you think people are resistant to change, or do you think because of they're uncertain about the change, so that's why they show their resistance?
Oh, people are highly resistant to change. That is the big part. I think as human beings, we do not like change at all. And we might say we like, but we want to hold on to the way of the things. Even if you go on a trip for 10 days, when you come back to your home bed, to your familiar pillow, and to your bedside table, and to your things, we want to come back to it, and we feel very satisfied. We feel safe, and we feel satisfied, even if we have seen a lot of the things. So the familiar things, the familiar routines, familiar way of doing things always makes us feel safer. That is because we are very afraid of things going wrong. We don't want to be uncomfortable. When we go outside, right, as soon as you leave the home, or when you leave the comfort, it can be exciting, it can be an adventure, but it can be a roller coaster. So we are afraid of things going wrong and we falling like in a roller coaster ride. But if we think of that as an adventure, if we start change that fear to an adventure, then it can happen. Because some people, they pack their bags, they reduce their belongings to one suitcase, and they start. I know in the US, some people like sell off their houses, and then some people buy a boat and start traveling in the sea or the waters, or somebody goes on a world tour, living in different countries for different months. So when you do something like that, right, you do not know what you're getting into, but you're ready for an adventure. So that sort of a mindset is very hard to create, But in general, people like the safety of familiar things. We don't want to change. So the second part was clear. It's uncertainty is the one, but it's fear of the uncertainty actually. Fear is the one, fear of uncertainty, which makes us resistant to change.
So it's all about fear.
It's
Other
about,
day we had really detailed discussion on fear. So it's all about fear.
yes, and if you look at the, I think I closed that. Did I close this Who Moved My Cheese book, right? So there, it when we have Who Moved My Cheese, I think it was, let's say, I think there are other PDFs here. Or it was in the archive.org. Yes, so this is where the Who Moved My Cheese is there. So they have the book in different formats over here. So you can choose which format you want. And they also have the free book in the PDF format. So so when you think of having cheese makes you happy, the more important, the cheese means whatever you want, things you hold on to, your job, anything. The more important it is, the more you want to hold on to it. And the big part here is that what would you do if you are not afraid? We are very afraid. That is why we are afraid to go out. And only when you let go of your fear, that is when we become open to new opportunities. That's kind of the key message from this book in terms of like fear being one of the key factors. Like, you know, so when they have these big lessons, anticipate change, monitor change, adapt to change quickly, and enjoy the change. I think once we start enjoying change, right, then it is like then it becomes an adventure. But a lot of the times we are very afraid of losing what we are familiar with. So that is why a lot of us we don't change much actually in our lives. We change, but we spend many years in the same place or in the same environment or with the same people, because we are afraid of the change that might happen. So change is often forced upon us, rather than we making a change a lot of the times. And if we start making the change, then that will make a huge difference.
So true, so true.
Yeah.
Okay, Khurram want to know which of the motivational factor played the most important leading role in bringing a change in one's life, whether it's professional, personal, or academic.
So which one motivational factor can play the most important role in bringing change in?
Is there any factor? Are there multiple factors?
For that, we have to go to my book on context. So let me share my book again. Let me share with the screen. And in my book here, I have a list of factors. Okay, the book is opening. So here there is a. So basically, all those factors are called context, as to what are the various factors can be. And I have here something called the elements of context. Okay, so all these elements here will give the various kinds of factors which can be there. So the factors can be based on the environment, which brings the change. So the type of environment, the structure of the environment, influence of key stakeholders, the culture, climate, all of those things can bring about change. Or it can be something that you're working on. What the type of it, the complexity of it, difficulty of it, uncertainty, urgency, that can be a change thing. What sort of need do you have? Again, if there is something that need can trigger change, a specific need. A specific type of information required can trigger change. You as a person, your own background, your age, your gender, the way you cope with circumstances, your problem-solving style, your habit, maybe if you have a disability, suddenly there's an accident or something, if there's a disease, how long have you been in some place, you get bored, you get tired, you feel underappreciated maybe, or you can have like your skills, your mood, the kind of information overload you're feeling, your attitude towards risk, your interest, your curiosity, your need for achievement. All of these can be factors to be changed. Something that in the type of people you're interacting with, your sources of information, there can be, that can arise change over there, time, space, all those things. So there are all of these various types of factors that are there, which can lead to the need for change.
Naresh, is this your book available in Indian edition?
No, it's not Indian edition, it's international edition, but the ebook is very cheap. Like the book itself is expensive. I think if we look for Amazon, exploring context for information behavior. So the book is expensive. Book is expensive, but the Kindle version, I actually fought with the publishers to make at least one version cheaper for people. So the ebook, the Kindle version is affordable.
Okay, what's the price of that Kindle?
Yeah, so that is $15, 15 US dollars.
$60.
No, 15, 15.
Okay, that is 15, and paperback is a $60.
Yeah, that is expensive, but the Kindle version is the one that is affordable. But you can also find sub chapters for free. So I think if you go to my website here under books, I have like a link where there's a read sample chapter. So
but we'll get the full book.
Yeah, for the full book
we'll definitely get the full book.
Okay.
Because we have subject on information behavior, and this book is very, very useful for that subject.
Yeah, I think it will help because it context is something which comes in all the things. So so I have in the later part of this, I have like examples of how to design research studies incorporating context. So here you have like
this book is kind of a similar to Wilson book. He wrote on theories in information, and this is context.
Yeah, so yes, it's those serve like theories. I have quoted Wilson a lot. I also recently interviewed him for a project Oneness World. But here you have yeah, so I think I missed that part. There's a little part in the front here, yes, where it shows how you can take different variables of context and you can design research studies like a survey study and all. So that way it can be useful to researchers. Thank you. And Kuram says, thanks for the response. I'll go through publication. Thank you. And then Rao Kurban says, which things to keep in mind for knowledge sharing internally as well as externally, meaning conference, workshop, etc. Is it? Yes. So I think for Rao Kurban, I had shared this one paper here called KM Tools. Yes. So this paper has a whole lot of strategies for knowledge sharing, for the tools that can help with knowledge sharing. So for just in terms of a process, you can have you can create a culture where library staff are rewarded to share. For example, having incentives to find and adapt solutions from within the library. You can have a collaborative physical workspace, so which means that you put like-minded people together. So have places where people can get together and work. So the location of offices and all that also can really help in terms of knowledge sharing. Communities of practice means creating people who have similar interests to work together, and creating a directory of experts. So directory of experts means what I like to do is that I like to ask everybody, what are the 3 things that you're good at, 3 things that you're experienced in, and 3 things that you're passionate about. So I do have like a few papers on those 3 things. It is called on the knowledge management. I have some older papers here called KCOM and all. So yeah, this one. So this talks about those three things aspect. How can you create like a digital ecosystem for collective intelligence? So for knowledge sharing, so you can gather the profiles of people, like do their type, what are the general interests, and then you can come up with a system where you ask those questions. So let's say, and every time like somebody answers a question, your rating goes. So initially you think that you're only good at one or two things, but then as you answer more questions, then your knowledge area grows, and people can rate the areas in terms of 3 stars, 5 stars, and all that. So I wrote this paper like a long time ago, in 2009, 2007, and so on. And later on, now there are systems like Quora.com and other kinds of expert systems that have come in. So there is this using this kind of a mechanism, right, can really help to find out what people know. And then you can do like storytelling, get people to have like to tell about the experiences about what went well, what didn't go well. And you can use a lot of other kinds of technologies to help you. File sharing, group communication, intranet portals, webinars, social networking. All of these are various ways to share knowledge. Okay, and Kuram asked that. So thank you.
He's acknowledging your services.
Thank you so much, Kuram. Yeah.
We all acknowledge your service, Dr. Naresh.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank you for your talk, and we have to finish it by 12 o'clock.
Okay.
So very quickly, I have 2 slides. I will try to finish it in like 10 minutes. So if you like to stay, you can stay, Dr. Naresh.
Yes, I will stay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. My talk is on how to create an effective change management strategy for transformation. We will look at the strategy sides. So the question is, why do we need change in organization, particularly in libraries and universities? Because of it's clear that due to changes in globalization, changes due to advances in technology, and more importantly, the era in which we are living is known as always on transformation, because things are moving and changing quite rapidly.
Dr.
On
Salman,
the other hand,
you can click on that full screen. There's an icon on the lower right, like a little thing. Yes, yeah.
Is it fine now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So that's why we need change for transformation, change for advancement, change to expand the services or to bring innovation in the services of the organization, to excel, to move forward, to stay up to date with ongoing changes in the world. So I always think, and this is probably one of my favorite quote by Barbara Johnson, that change is a process, not an event. So I would take it in a way, if somebody tells you that I will change the thing, he probably won't be able to get it changed, because it's a team process, and it's not an event that overnight things will get changed. It will take time. So we have to keep in mind that change, if we have to bring change in organization, it's a continuous, sometimes a tiring process. It's not just an event. Therefore, we can say that people are resistant to some extent to change, and people don't like to change their routine behavior, as Dr. Naresh said, because of the uncertainty. People are uncertain of what will be happen in future, what change we will bring, and would our role. People are uncertain about things. So therefore, they are resistant to change, and they say, what does this mean for me? What did change bring for me? Their resistance, they are uncertain because of their lack of competence, attachment to current state. They're fine the way they are living their lives and the way they're working their work. They're happy with their routine life, and they don't want to get out of that box, their comfort zone. They are not prepared to consider the new. Most of the people, if you look in any organization, they are living in their comfortable zone, and they are not attempting, they are not ready to consider the new change. Therefore, people become resistance to change. If we look at this diagram, or flow, there are several stages people go through while accepting or embracing to any new change. To be mindful of people feeling while putting your plan into operation. You can see that they go through from denial to anger to bargaining position to depression because of that change that is coming into that organization. Then they slightly start accepting that change. They do experiment it, they find it, discover it, then they integrate that change into their routine tasks. So these are the stages one usually go through. Okay, what we have to understand here, there is a diffusion of innovation theory. So it came in 1961, I guess. So it says that there are people who embrace the change known as innovator. For example, if there is new change coming up, and the first 2.5 people who will accept that change will be known as innovator. The rest of 13.5% people who will embrace that change or accept that change will be known as early adopters. Innovators and early adopters are influential to make that change or adopt that change to the massive people, the rest of the people who are following them, to the point at critical mass where maximum people can accept that change. You can see early majority and late majority are in the majority. Then there are laggard. Laggard are those people who are very slow to us in accepting the change. Here is the graph. We can say first 2.5 people are known as innovator who embraced any change. Then 12.5 people are known as early adopters. Then majority 34% people are known as the people who accept the change as early majority. Similarly, 13.4 people are late majority, and rest of the 16 people are known as laggard. The problem, any change and embracing any change is the chasm. There is a gap between innovator, early adopter, and then rest of the people, early majority, late majority, and laggard. Therefore, we see that any change, for example, if we're going to develop digital libraries, there were the people who developed their library, converted their libraries toward digitization, but majority of the people failed to do that because there was a chasm. Chasm is kind of a gap between the innovator, early adopter, and then early majority, a late majority, and laggard. So that's why any new change cannot get critical mass. A maximum people cannot widely accepted or regarded or implemented. So we have to look that how we can minimize that chasm, or how we can combine and bring more people from early majority to late majority towards the early adopter, a laggard towards the late majority or early majority. It's all about shifting the people from those categories who are resistant to technology toward putting them into categories where people usually accept the change. So in my opinion, what I have learned, the stages of change model, the stages of behavioral change is one of the classic example, a classic model that help us to not only measure the behavioral outcome of the people that in which stage they are falling for change, and it also help us and guide us to change the categories of the people. In this model, if we look at the bottom, the very first step is pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation stage is a stage where people are unaware of the problem or unaware of the change. So in this stage, if awareness may be given to people, then they come to the next stage, which is contemplation stage. On this stage, people become aware of the problem and of the desired behavioral change. They intend to change their behavior, or you can say that they desire that the change is required. If we give them at this stage more knowledge about the change, then they come up to the next stage, which is preparation stage. They intend to take likely action, and they intend that they will take the required action, and they become the part of that change. At this stage, if whatever the change is, if we're bringing change in service innovation, then if we provide them the proper platform, infrastructure, and facilities they need to be part of that change, then their action, their behavior become active, and they start practicing the desired behavior, and they become an active member of the process of that change. And then the last stage is maintenance. Works to this is one of the most important things. People become part of a change, but they with passage of time they get themselves out of this process of the change. So here maintenance important, that for sustainable change, people should be part of that change process for a long run. So it starts from pre-contemplation, then contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Before any change, if we see and if we conduct a survey of the employers to see that in which category they fall, if any organization is attempting to bring any change, because every organization needs fresh initiative, new initiatives. So for that purpose, but measuring the behavior of the people, the what stage on the stage of behavior change they are at this moment is important. For example, if people are at the stage of contemplation, it means that we need to introduce the interventions that increase their knowledge about the change. Or on the other hand, if they are at the stage of preparation, I mean, they intend to take action. So at this stage, there is need to provide them with the infrastructure and facilities. So they may be part of that change, and they may take active action toward that change process. So here it's not just a behavioral change model. It not only change the behavior, but it's all about behavior. It's all about the change process. Like I said, change is not just an event. It's a process, and one has to go through that process. And people are exhausting toward the process of change actually. So here, like I said, okay, there are three factors which play an important role for shaping a behavioral action. The first is predisposing factors. It provides the motivation, a reason behind a behavior. They may include knowledge, attitude, belief, and readiness to change. If any organizer attempting for a change, it required to increase the knowledge of their employees, to introduce the intervention that influence on their attitude, belief, and they make them readiness to change. There are an enabling factor. make it possible for a motivation to be realized. That is, they enable persons to act on their predisposition. Enabling factor include available resources, skills, and technology. One of the reasons for uncertainty among employees may include that they see that they don't have certain set of skills which are needed to be part of that change process. So it is the responsibility of that organization. If that organization is taking a fresh initiative for change, he may enable the employees and give them the required set of skills through training, through workshop, that they may effectively play their role in the change process. And then the last one is reinforcing factor. It comes into play to reward a behavior, therefore increasing the probability that it will continue. Because sustainability is an issue, many organizations take initiative or take step toward change, but more often they flop in the way, or their whole system collapse, and they struggle to bring that change on the way, along the way, because of the reinforcing factors. Reinforcing factors include the community or institutional support, peer influence, and opinion leaders' involvement are the main reinforcing factors that reinforce and predispose behavior change. So there is need to involve the community, and there should be institutional support. There should be the leaders of that field who should be involved, and their opinion should be taken, because people influence and follow their opinion leaders. People who are in the higher rank, or who are the higher achiever in that field, people follow them. And there are four strategic imperatives actually. So very quickly we should look into them. There should be a purpose for any change. It should be a purpose oriented, and people who are involved in that change process should be inspired through the purpose of that change. They should be given a very detailed awareness and knowledge about the purpose, that how this change will bring and help them in the future, how this change will shape their life and the life of the community. And the other is to go all in. Change can become with the teamwork. If any of the team member is not working properly, the change may not come. And uh, it's very hard that individual may bring any change in any organization. If it bring, it won't be sustainable. So for a sustainable change, it's important that all team members should go all in, to be united, and they should work together, and they should put their effort together. Enable people with the capabilities, we have talked on this. Instill a culture of continuous learning. This is important. Rather than having a culture of competition among the organization, there should be a culture of conducive learning, because learning is the only way forward, and that can bring a change. So Dr. Naresh has given a detailed talk on organization culture and culture of continuous learning. So these are the references, and thank you. If any person got any question, they may ask, because we has to finish it at 12 o'clock, and we are like 4 minutes ahead.
I think, Dr. Salman, you summed up a lot of things that I was saying, and brought it really well. And what you had, that when you talked about the Rogers model of innovation, right? And I had used that in the KM tools paper when I talked about which tools do people want to use. And so one of the things is that you cannot really work with the laggards, people who are resistant to change initially. You work with the innovators and early adopters, and which means that in any organization there'll be three types of people. those who are the most enthusiastic for change, those are the least enthusiastic, and there are somewhere in between. So you always, if you're a top management person or a leader, you always start with the most enthusiastic people. Identify them, get them to join your team, and then do some small pilot projects. And if that succeeds, then you have some sort of a prototype to get involved with some more people from the early middle tier. Get some more of them, and as they start getting more, then finally you get to the last people with a system of what they say is that carrots and sticks, in the sense that you provide incentives for joining the change and you provide disincentives for not joining. That if you do not join the change, then you lose something, and slowly then I think everybody joins.
Exactly. That's how we will be able, or one organization be able to create a conducive culture. I guess it's all about organization culture.
Yeah.
Like you said, bringing the people who are at the bottom into the process of change will help in creating a conducive culture of the organization.
Yeah. I think Professor Bhatti has to leave for a meeting. So thank you, Professor Bhatti.
Yes. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Naresh, for your valuable time and very insightful talk. So we really appreciate it, and we consider you as part of our department, actually.
Thank you, Dr. Saman. And I greatly enjoyed your talk too.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon. Thank you. And that concludes our post-conference workshop. And I would like to thank all the participants for being with us and for joining us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh.
Thank you.